Coming up on the 1-0 Sports Show, we break down college basketball. We'll bring you some highlights from the past week, and Jordan Mitchell joins us to talk about Texas baseball. All this and more coming up on the 1-0 Sports Show.
Texas finally 1-0, finally riding for the brand, although Tom Herman did say they were 1-0 10 times last season.
Feinbaum, I'll give him like half a point.
Dude, you like
okay.
Feinbaum way too much.
Yeah, all right. I'm like
you're
I'm the Feinbaum of this show.
By the way, that looks Ohio State. Is that an omen? Give me that Longhorn hat.
Oh man!
Hook him, baby.
All right, he's pulling the torso.
Welcome into the 1-0 Sports Show, and for the very first time making his TV debut, Mr. Bowen Jacobs. How you doing, Bowen?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Good to have you on this morning, man. Man, we got a loaded show. A lot of sports going on right now.
Absolutely.
Well, we got to start today like we start every single 1-0 Sports Show, and that's with who's hot and who's not. So, Bowen, who's hot for you right now?
Who's hot for me is Texas baseball, currently #1 in the nation, 9-0, outscoring opponents 72-10. Our pitching is fantastic, led by Tristan Stevens and Hansen. And then our closer with Aaron Nixon, it leaves basically the opponents no room to breathe.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to hear a lot about Texas baseball. They got a big couple games coming up this week. And Jordan Mitchell from the Daily Texan, she's going to join us later to talk about that. But yeah, heck of a start to the season. They've definitely shown why they were ranked #1 in the preseason. For me, I'm going to go wide receivers. You know, the combine going on right now. Some call it the underwear Olympics. But how about the 40 times from some of these receivers for the first time in combine history? 9 receivers ran under a 4.4. Baylor receiver Tyquan Thornton set a record with a 4.21 second 40-yard dash. Bayless Jones wasn't far behind him with a 4.32 second. And Memphis receiver Calvin Austin ran a 4.33 second one. So a lot of speed out of these receivers at the combine.
And it seems like every year, like all the athletes are just getting better and better. And it's going to be interesting to see just how they continue to improve year after year.
For sure. You look at all these diets. I mean, you look at Tom Brady with his supplements. There's so many different things that athletes are doing where, I mean, you look at guys like Babe Ruth, 100 years ago, it's just a very different athlete nowadays. So, well, we've talked about who's hot. Let's flip it around to who's not. Bowen, who's not hot for you?
So for my who's not, I have the Pitt quarterback Kenny Pickett. During the NFL scouting combine, his hands were measured at 8.5 inches. Now, to us normal people, this may not be a big deal, but there has never been a QB selected in the first round with hands under 9 inches. So I don't know if this will affect his NFL play. I think it's going to be up to the organizations in the NFL. But it's going to be interesting to see if that affects his draft stock in any way.
Yeah, you wonder about some of these measurements. Sometimes they seem a little bit excessive, and then they have the interviews with some of the weird questions you'll hear that they ask. So you wonder how much of the combine, are you really getting data that's really going to be impactful for the future? So we'll see about that. I know some people have been talking about maybe him getting drafted by his hometown Steelers. So that could be an interesting one to watch. NFL draft isn't too far away, only about a month and a half to it. So for my who's not, I'm going to go over to the golf world. John Rahm, he's tied for 51st. He shot even par yesterday at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. But that's not why he's who's not. It's this, a 10-inch putt, and he stubs it into the ground. The ball barely moves. I mean, that's what you call a tap in. He's one of the best on the PGA Tour. And it just wasn't his day, I guess, from that shot.
This looks like something I would do at putt-putt, but I mean, I guess everybody has one of those shots, so.
Hey, that's where at putt-putt you're asking for a mulligan. You're looking around. Did anyone see it? Did my friends see it? Okay, I'm just going to tap it in now. You're not counting that. But that's tough when you're on TV and the whole world's watching.
Millions of viewers.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, that's it for who's hot, who's not. Let's go on to what's trending. We got a lot of basketball to talk with. It was a crazy week in college basketball. Last Saturday, for the first time in history, the top 6 teams in the nation all lost. There have been some more upsets this week. Bowen, I mean, what's been the most shocking upset for you since last Saturday?
The most shocking to me would be Gonzaga. St. Mary beating them 67-57 Saturday. They just completely neutralized Tim, their leading scorer, which if other teams catch on to that, it could pose a lot of trouble for Gonzaga in later March and early April.
Yeah, for sure. It seemed in that game, I was watching the end of it, it seemed like every time Gonzaga tried to kind of go on a run, or you thought, oh, Gonzaga's going to make it close. St. Mary's, they made another big shot. They made a couple big threes down the stretch to really put that game away. So impressive showing by the Gales. I mean, they're 23 in the nation. I mean, they're one of those maybe sleepers in March. I mean, not a deep run, but they could catch a team off guard.
Right. I think so. If they can formulate such a good game plan against a number one team, who knows what they could do later on.
For sure. I'm going to actually bring mine back to the Big 12 for my most shocking upset. How about TCU? They knocked off not only number 9 Texas Tech last weekend, but then they come off midweek and they knock off number 4 Kansas. Just a great week for the Horned Frogs. Jamie Dixon doing some great stuff there. Mike Miles had 26 against Tech. He had 19 against Kansas. I mean, this TCU team that desperately needs some big wins to really kind of solidify its NCAA tournament stock, and it definitely did that this week.
And I think the Big 12 is a tournament team and a tournament that we're going to have to watch. I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. I think all the teams do have a good shot at winning the tournament.
That's honestly a great point, because you obviously have your favorites, but when you're seeing TCU able to do this back-to-back weeks and, seeing Texas get a couple of big wins, I mean, it's a pretty open conference. Even, Kansas State, Oklahoma on the right night, I mean, even West Virginia gave Texas a heck of a game last Saturday. So, you can see it here on this standings. This is a pretty deep conference. And I'm going to actually segue into our next question directly talking about the tournament. Who do you think is going to win it? You look at all these teams. I mean, it's a pretty tight conference.
Right. I think it's easy to say Baylor or Kansas. Obviously, those are the favorite. But as we were just saying, I think any of these teams have a shot. I think ultimately that Baylor will come out. I think they just have too much talent to get beat by anyone else. But maybe Kansas, maybe even Texas could give them a run. I think anybody has a chance. But the favorite is obviously going to be Baylor.
Yeah, this would be one of those tournaments where you maybe wouldn't be surprised and maybe see a lower seed or two ended up making it. I'm going to keep my eye, though, on Kansas. Baylor right now without L.J. Cryer, Jonathan Tashamwa due to injury. So, I like Kansas. I like what Ochai Agbaji's been doing. David McCormick, he's a talented big man. You got Christian Braun who can shoot the ball. And I think the biggest advantage for Kansas is this tournament's always in Kansas City. They've always got that pro Jayhawk crowd. When you look at teams like Baylor, like Texas Tech, they're going to have to travel up to Kansas City. Kansas basically has a couple more home games, and we saw what they did to Baylor at Allen Fieldhouse. So it'll be fun, though. I mean, I think it's wide open. Like you said, I think Texas Tech's a dark horse not only now, but even when you go into March Madness, I think they'll be a team to watch. And you never know with Texas. Chris Beard, he tends to do pretty well come postseason. But
I think so.
My money's on Kansas right now. But like you said, Bone, I think it could get wild. Let's wrap up our first segment with some Major League Baseball. Some downer news. The MLB canceled the first 2 series of the regular season this past week as the lockout now continues. Bone, who do you think is to blame for this lockout?
I want to say it's the organizations. I don't really think that it's the players' fault. I think they just want to play. Obviously, they want their rules, they want their money and whatnot. But I feel like the organizations and the owners are the ones who are kind of making this not go well by trying not to give the players what they want. The players are that's who you're paying. I mean, that is the game. So I feel like it's ultimately the higher-ups in the MLB itself that are making this go like that.
Well, it's a good point, too, because, those owners are kind of the winners from this because they're not having to issue any paychecks right now. So the longer these negotiations go on, that's more cash sitting in their pocket at the end of the day. And then you got Rob Manfred, too. It was a really bad look, kind of chuckling during the press conference, on Tuesday when they're announcing the 2 series were canceled. So I think kind of the higher-ups, I think the players just want to play. We see a lot of them frustration over Twitter, just kind of voicing their frustration. So hopefully the owners will maybe be able to give them a little bit better offer. They'll find a way to kind of meet in the middle, and we'll get back to some baseball soon. Because opening day, it was supposed to be here at the end of March. Going to be a little bit later than that, but hopefully not too late. Hopefully we'll have some good baseball come summertime. That'll do it for the first segment of the One and O Sports Show. But coming up, we'll talk a lot more basketball with some BS or real talk. We'll tell you what to believe and what not when we come back on the One and O Sports Show. Welcome back into the One and O Sports Show on this lovely Friday morning. It is time for a segment around here that we call BS or Real Talk. Time to tell you what storylines to believe and what is utter garbage. So let's start with the 76ers. James Harden had a great debut against the Knicks. It's given the 76ers a lot of hope. So, with the Eastern Conference so tight, can they rebound and win the East now with James Harden and Joel Embiid playing together?
I think this is real talk. Like you said, the top of the Eastern Conference is very close. Not like the West, where it's very clear the Phoenix Suns are much further ahead. With Harden doing so good in his debut against the Knicks, nearly averaging a triple-double, I think ultimately time will tell if the 76ers can make a run, but if they use that momentum, especially going in to play the #1 team in the East right now, the Heat, this Saturday, I think it's certainly a possibility that the 76ers can win the East.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say real talk as well. I think the 76ers team, Harden, is just such an injection of scoring that you didn't have, especially with Ben Simmons. You get rid of him, you get Harden, who can shoot the ball from three. He just brings another dynamic to the 76ers team, and really an offensive injection, especially with Joel Embiid, who I think he's becoming the player that the 76ers hoped that he would be when they drafted him all the way back. They had to wait through a couple of years of injuries and stuff, but he's really come into his own. He's an MVP candidate this year, so I think James Harden, I think he boosts the 76ers over the top. The East is going to be fun to watch, so the question will be, can they perform in the playoffs? Because I know James Harden, he's kind of had that history of kind of disappearing in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see. It's going to be a fun NBA postseason. There is a lot of parity, especially at the top of the East. Let's go over to the West. And like you said, Suns are kind of run away with it, so we can't talk about the top. But let's go down to the play-in spots. The Lakers are a mess. They're 7 games below 500. Will they make it past the play-in round of the playoffs? Remember, that's when the 7 seed plays the 8. Winner makes the playoffs. 9 plays the 10. The winner of that plays the loser of the 7-8, and the winner that gets in. So it's kind of like a stair step trying to get into those final 2 playoff spots. So will the Lakers make it past that play-in round, or they will make it past the play-in round? BS or real talk?
I'm going to say this is BS. Now, there's a lot of chances for LeBron to whip his team into shape and to win one of those games to get in, but ultimately, I just do not see the Lakers making it, even when Anthony Davis will come back. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games, and I think the headlines that they have another failed Lakers super team, I think those headlines are starting to get in the players' heads, and I think ultimately, I just don't think they'll be able to make it.
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say real talk. I think they need Anthony Davis to come back from injury, and I just trust LeBron these one-off games in when it comes to postseason time. Are they going to win a series? Heck no. This team is not talented enough to string together 3-4 wins. But you say LeBron, can he get 2 wins on 2 nights against? Because they're even playing mediocre teams,
right,
and you're playing the 7 and the 8 seed, so they're not playing the Heat or the 76ers or the Nets or the Bucks. I think LeBron, or that's the Eastern Conference. I was still thinking about the 76ers. They're not playing the Suns, Nuggets,
right,
Warriors. But I just feel like LeBron, he can kind of will this team to 2 wins, 2 nights, 2 one-offs. We saw, I believe, the Warriors lost last year to the Grizzlies in one of these one-offs, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not making that up. But I just feel like LeBron can carry this team through a one-off. So I'm going to say real talk, but it's going to be interesting to see. And they really need AD back from injury in order to do that.
Definitely.
Let's stay in basketball, but let's flip to the college side. I know we talked about Gonzaga. They got knocked off by St. Mary's this past week. But besides that, they've been unblemished in the West Coast Conference. So Gonzaga will make it back in the national championship game. Remember, they're ranked #1 right now. Is that BS or real talk? Owen?
I think it's real talk. So the Bulldogs lost to St. Mary's Saturday, 67-57. And like I said earlier, the key factor was that they neutralized their leading scorer in Timmy. And basically, once they took that out, they were so aggressive, it never gave Gonzaga any room to breathe. Gonzaga is 0-3 this season when trailing at halftime. And so that bodes a lot of potential ways for teams to attack Gonzaga in the future in the tournaments. However, I still think, Gonzaga beat St. Mary's easily 2 weeks earlier. And they had won 34 straight conference games, and 33 of those conference games were double-digit wins. So we know how good Gonzaga is. I think this was a hump. I think Gonzaga gets over it. I think they figure out a way to maybe get the ball out of Timmy's hands, stop relying on him as much, and let their other scorers do a little bit better. And I think they go very deep.
Yeah, they got some other scores, too. I know one of them is Rasir Bolton, the Iowa State transfer, so he's one to keep an eye on. But for me, I think you look back to last year, Gonzaga and Baylor were always the top 2 teams. It was always Gonzaga and Baylor and then everyone else. But this year just feels like there's a lot more parity. And what concerns me, you mentioned those 33 double-digit wins in the past 34 conference games. But the issue is that they don't really play anyone in their conference besides St. Mary's. Now, BYU, San Francisco's actually having a good year, the Dons are. But beneath that, they're not really getting challenged by Pepperdine or Pacific specific. And so you look at Baylor, where there's not an easy game they'll play on the Big 12 schedule. I mean, even Kansas State or West Virginia, they're not really easy games, especially when you're having to travel up to Manhattan or Morgantown. Same thing with, like a Kansas. Or you look at how deep the Big 10 is with Purdue. So I'm just worried with all that parity at the top and with Gonzaga, weaker conference schedule. And this is a team that historically hasn't always been the best in March. They've been ranked as a high seed and hasn't always performed. I think the national championship is a big ask, so I'm going to go BS on this one. I think, like you said, Gonzaga can make a run, Sweet 16, Elite 8. Can they make it back to the national championship? I don't think so. I just think there's too much competition from other Power 5 conference teams. But going to be fun to watch for sure, and I think we've mentioned this a couple times. Keep an eye on St. Mary's. They could be a bracket buster.
Absolutely.
Let's flip over to the NFL. Evan Neal, big old lineman out of Alabama. Been a lot of talk about him lately, maybe being the first overall pick with the Jaguars. There's a couple other options, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau. North Carolina State has a real good offensive lineman. Who do you think will it be? Evan Neal? So the statement, Evan Neal will be the first overall pick come April. Is that BS or real talk?
I think it's real talk. As we know, last year's draft class was very heavy, great star power at the quarterback position. People took their quarterbacks as quick as they could. So I think all of the organizations are going to look to build the trenches around them to protect those young quarterbacks. Obviously, not a very good quarterback class this year, as we know. So they're going to look to get those offensive linemen. Evan Neal, to me, is the best choice at this combine. And I think he's going to look to prove that whenever he does get to the combine, shows versatility in all different aspects. I think an offensive lineman will be taken off the board, like you said earlier, from NC State, Akeem Ikwanu, a sophomore, is also probably – him and Evan Neal are going to be number one, but I think that Jacksonville will take Evan Neal to protect Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I would trust Neal over Ikwanu just because, you're looking at Alabama,
Right.
just kind of honestly the legacy that comes out of there. I'm going to say real talk as well. He's a huge guy. He's versatile, and they really need to protect Trevor Lawrence. You look at their skill positions, too. They got some good players, Travis Etienne, and they got Laviska and Marvin Jones out the receiver position, so they have the skill positions, and now they just need to protect Lawrence up front. You look at teams like the Bengals who struggle to protect Joe Burrow. Like you said, offensive line is a big need in this draft. I think the Jaguars, it's going to come down to either that or probably on the defensive end with Aiden Hutchinson, maybe Kayvon Thibodeau sneaking out there. But I just like the idea of trying to get a guy to protect Trevor Lawrence, and it feels like Evan Neal's stock is really, really rising in the moment. We've still got 6-7 weeks to the NFL draft. So that one will be an interesting one. And hey, as a native Houstonian, I'm just happy the Texans finally have a first-round pick. It's been a long time since that. But anyways, that will do it for our second segment. When we come back, me and Bowen, we're going to bring some of the highlights of the week, and we'll break down the top 4 teams in the NCAA basketball right now, heading into conference tournament week. You won't want to miss it. You're watching the One and Only Sports Show. Welcome back into the 1-0 Sports Show. It's been a crazy week in sports. We're right at the height of basketball season. We got Texas baseball and softball starting up, so a lot of highlights to get to. So let's jump right into it. Bowen, do you want to start? We got categories for each of these, so we're going to break down just some of the top plays from the week. So Bowen, why don't we start with your best buzzer beater of the week? Let's break it down.
My best buzzer beater of the week goes to Ja Morant with 0.4 seconds mid-air at halftime, put 70 on, and Ja Morant just had a crazy game against the Spurs. And like I said, this was the most watched NBA post on Instagram with 42 million views.
It's like a quarterback throw. I mean, man, you wind it up, and how about Ja Morant? Because he caught that mid-air. That whole
and
thing
threw
was
it in
mid-air.
there.
He's insane. He's a crazy athlete. I mean, some of the dunks, so it's pretty impressive. The pride of Murray State, the Racers, Ja Morant. I'm going to go another kind of full cross-court pass. Let's go to some ACC basketball. Florida State, 1 second left, down by 2 against Virginia. How about this from Matthew Cleveland? The catch and turn all in one motion, and it's onions for the win. It's just an impressive shot. Florida State, they haven't been great this year. They've been pretty markedly average, but just the athleticism by Cleveland to catch it. I mean, it's really one motion, catch, turn, and heave. I mean, to even have a really prayer to even hit the rim on that shot's impressive, but to go in, make it for the win in a hostile road environment, heck of a shot there by Matthew Cleveland. Let's stay in basketball, going from best buzzer beater to best dunk of the week. Bowen, I might be noticing a pattern on you. What's your best dunk of the week?
I'm going back to that Spurs game. Not only did John Morant have that awesome buzzer beater, he also had arguably one of the best dunks of the season, arguably better than all of the All-Star dunk contests. Massive poster on Jakob Portal, and he just had an insane night. I think dropped close to 50 points, and that proves it right there.
Yeah, they got to get him on the dunk contest. My goodness. I mean, if he's doing that stuff in game, imagine what he can scheme up in the dunk contest with no defense or anything. But yeah, poor old Jakob Poeltl, he's going to be on a poster for a little bit after that. I'm going to go to some SEC basketball. Georgia is a terrible basketball program. No offense, but this is a fantastic dunk by Cario Aquendo. Look at this, putting Tennessee Santiago Vescovi on a poster. How about that with the tomahawk? Georgia, they haven't had much to celebrate this year. They're 6-22 at the moment, but man, that is a heck of a dunk.
Yeah, I mean, anybody being able to do that is impressive. I just feel bad for the guy who was under him.
Yeah. We've got a couple guys, Poeltl and Vescovi. They be on some posters here in a little bit. We talked a lot about basketball. Let's go best Texas play of the week. Baseball and softball both starting up. So, Bowen, what's your best Texas play of the week?
Mine is Skylar Messenger. He had his first home run as a Longhorn, 2-run shot off the scoreboard, drives in 2 runs, as I said, to give Texas that 10-1 victory over Sam Houston. Yeah,
the Kansas transfer, Skylar Messenger, he's going to be a key player for them at third base, especially as they replace Cam Williams this year. So good to see him getting a good start. And
definitely.
Like you said, the offensive machine just keeps on churning. I'm going to stay in kind of the baseball softball realm. How about Texas softball? Freshman pitcher Sophia Simpson, a no-hitter against UTSA. You're going to get a lot of strikeouts right here, back to back to back to back. 12 strikeouts in all in the night as the Longhorns win 8-0 in 6 innings over the Roadrunners. How about that from the freshman coming out and dealing a no-hitter?
I mean, it's impressive for anybody to do that. And as a freshman coming in and throwing a no-hitter, it's very bright for our Texas softball team.
For sure. I think she settled into her college career pretty quickly, didn't she? All right, let's go. Well, we got some options with this one. How about biggest blooper of the week? Bowen, what do you have for us?
So I have the viral video of Tristan Thompson underneath the basketball goal during warm-ups, consecutively missing shots. And needless to say, it's pretty embarrassing. I mean, I'm not the greatest basketball player, but I think I can make at least one of them. And as an NBA player, I think people are kind of starting to think, is he start to lost it?
Yeah, it's 5 or 6 in a row that he's just bricking. And I don't know if you saw the Mountain Dew clutch in the NBA All-Star game. There was a similar instance where one of the shots was a layup, and there were I can't remember who it was, but man, they missed 4 or 5 layups in a row. It was almost a meme. They were making the corner threes and kind of the jumper, the different shots they needed to make, and they could not make the layup. So I guess Tristan Thompson knows what he's practicing for the next warm-ups. But for me, I'm going to go, how about some Texas 1A basketball? I saw this was circulating on Twitter this week. Will Dorado and Nazareth. Will Dorado was down by 2 with just seconds remaining. And the refs, let's just say, they got it wrong. Watch this highlight. Will Dorado. So you can see both teams celebrating Will Dorado, but keep an eye on the clock here as we put it in slow motion. It is at 0 right there, and the ball is still on the floor, and then it goes up. I mean, this isn't just a normal basketball game. This is third round of playoffs. That is a call that really is an official. You really have to get right, especially, I mean, you look at, it's not even like he's going up. It's not like one of those fingertip things as the buzzer's going off. He's still on the ground with the ball. So, when you got 3 officials, one of them's got to have the eye on a clock. That's a huge mistake to be making, with a trip to the final 8 on the line.
Right, yeah, that's a really bad play by the officials, and I guarantee you there were some very upset parents in that sense.
Oh, I bet. Especially, for those seniors, man, you work so hard, you deserve to win, and you lose kind of really on a kind of a technicality like that. Just really a heartbreaker. Let's move on to our final highlight segment. How about some show and tell? anything that we think would be fun or interesting to talk about. So Bowen, enlighten us with something at Show and Tell.
So what I have is going back to UT baseball. They're currently outscoring their opponents 72-10. So in 9 games played, that means their opponents score about 1 per game, while Texas scores 8 per game on average. I mean, that's good, very good in baseball terms, and that just shows why Texas baseball is the #1 team in the nation. And I think if they continue that hot streak going into Houston this weekend, I think it'll be very good for them.
Yeah, I mean, you see that run. It goes, 15, 14 against Rice in back-to-back games and 12 against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I mean, this team can rack it up. And like you said, it's going to be interesting to see this weekend, that they can put runs on Rice and Corpus Christi and damn Houston. Can they do it on some of the big, heavy hitters this weekend?
Right.
Definitely will be fun to watch. How about this one? This one out of the Horizon tournament. IUPUI, arguably, I've seen they've been labeled the worst team in college basketball. Only 3 wins, one of those against a Division I opponent. But how about this? They played their Horizon first round tournament game against Oakland with only 5 players. It's first time since 2000 the team has played a game with only 5 players available. So they got no bench. They were 23-point underdogs. That's kind of those where you're thinking, oh, I've got the value. I've got the value. Oakland's surely going to cover. No, IUPUI actually made this a game. You can see at one point in this highlight, it was only a 6-point game, but Oakland eventually pulls away that shot at the buzzer, making it only a 12-point defeat, 70-58. But honestly, when you got 5 guys only playing all 40 minutes, it's not necessarily even 5 scholarship guys. It's 5 guys. They held open tryouts at one point. I mean, this was a team desperate for numbers. So to give Oakland a game and only lose by 12 with the lack of depth they had, it's a pretty impressive feat.
Absolutely, and I think it shows the heart between that team and those players. Like you said, not a very big bench. Having to play all 40 minutes is just very impressive.
Those are 5 guys you want to build a program around, like you said, that heart. For sure. Let's stay in college basketball. Like we mentioned, crazy week. All 6 of the top 6 teams lost last Saturday. So who is in your top 4 right now heading into the final regular season game in conference tournament week? Bowen, let's start with you.
So my number 1 is going to start with Gonzaga. So even though they lost to St. Mary's, I still think they're a very strong contender to be number 1. After that, we have Arizona, Auburn coming in, and then Baylor coming into that 4th spot.
Yeah, for me, I agree with you. I think Gonzaga's got to stay number 1. I think it'll be interesting to see how they actually do in March, but nothing to really take them away from number 1, especially with everyone else losing. I'm going to put Baylor at number 2 just because of strength of schedule. Impressive wins over Kansas and Texas lately. Then we got Arizona at number 3. Had a tough loss to Colorado last time out. I put Baylor over them just because strength of schedule in the Big 12. And then we're going to slide Kansas in there at number 4. They had a bad loss to TCU midweek, but I just think this Kansas team is going to get hot in March. I like Bill Self in March. I like the Big 12 tournament is in Kansas City. You got guys like Ochai Agbaji, David McCormick. I think Kansas interesting at number 4, but I mean, there's a lot of parity this year. I mean, last year was always Gonzaga 1, Baylor 2, everyone else. I mean, this year I think it's a wide open field. I think March could be pretty wild and pretty fun this year.
March Madness at its finest.
Yep, cannot wait for that. And it starts really with conference tournament week starts tomorrow. So expect some buzzer beaters and a lot of highlights to come over this next month. It's good to have college basketball in full arenas back. When we come back on the 1-0 Sports Show, Daily Texan baseball reporter Jordan Mitchell is going to join us to break down the Longhorns' 9-0 start and look ahead to a big weekend in Houston for the Horns. You won't want to miss it. You're watching the 1-0 Sports Show. Welcome back into the 1-0 Sports Show, now joined by Daily Texan baseball reporter Jordan Mitchell. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing good. Good to have you on. Great to talk about baseball, too. What a start to the season, 9-0. We finally got a Texas team actually punching where they were ranked in preseason. So, I mean, let's talk about that 9-0 start. I know Bowen's talked a lot about it with just kind of the offensive explosion and everything going on. I mean, what's impressed you most about the team in the first couple weeks of the season?
Honestly, the thing that has impressed me most is just the sheer confidence that this team has in one another. I mean, you're coming into a season with all of these preseason accolades. They were preseason number 1. They had 7 All-Americans. And this team just doesn't seem to be fazed by In fact, it's almost as if it soothes them. I don't know if y'all watched the Alabama game where Tanner Witt pitched, but there was some pressure cooker situations that he was forced into. In the moment that Dish Fox started roaring, he was just on his A game. This team plays best whenever they're under pressure, and it seems to be working out in their benefit because they are outscoring opponents, I think 72-10 or something crazy like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially when they're grinding, or you've seen blowout Rice and Texas A&M and Corpus Christi, but almost just, I mean, maybe even more impressive to grind out those tight wins against Alabama.
Yeah.
Building off the first question, which players have impressed you the most so far this season?
Honestly, I'm going to have to go with Murphy Staley. Coach Pierce has talked about him a lot, just being the person that is always staying out the latest and just grinding it out. Honestly, whenever he came into this program, David Pierce wasn't expecting him to be that DH role. And of course, he has his other talents. I mean, we've tried him out at third base. He can honestly play anywhere in the outfield. I mean, he's just an absolute player. He's a competitor, but now he can drive the ball anywhere that he wants down the field. I think he's batting at around 400 for the season. And yeah, he's just playing absolutely phenomenally. And he's really grown into his role as DH.
That's awesome. And I think it's really good to have those type of utility players. You can use them wherever you need them, especially when they're batting at such a high average.
Yeah, especially too, I mean, you look at the offense that Texas had to replace from last year, the Mike Anticos, the Cam Williams, Zach Zubius going pro. Good to see someone stepping up in their place and bringing some runs and good batting average to the table. But, we talk about Murphy Staley, great start to the year for him, but who's one player that might not be on many Texas fans' radar right now that you think could have a breakout year?
So I actually have two players for you because I think that starting off, Ivan Melendez, everybody knows him as the Hispanic Titanic. I mean, he had those 2 moonshots in that opening weekend, but I think people fail to realize that he really hasn't started in first base since, I think, junior college. Him stepping up in Zach Zubi's role, he's just been getting those easy putouts, and he's been playing absolutely phenomenally in the infield. And then I think the better answer, just overall, a player that not everybody knows about is probably Andre Duplantier. I mean, he was out for probably about 2 years just because of the COVID season and him undergoing surgery. So him stepping up to the mound and really only allowing, I think, one run in his 11 innings pitched. I mean, he just got up, he started that midweek game, and he's just been playing absolutely phenomenally as a shutout pitcher.
Yeah, for sure. Good to have him back from injury. I know he missed all of last year. And like you said, Ivan Melendez, he may not be your stereotypical breakout player, but when you think about the defensive side of it, it'll be important to see, that he can keep that kind of up. Because you can't have those errors at first base, especially trying to get those easy outs to get out of jams sometimes.
Yeah. So what areas of weakness do you think this Texas team has?
So I'm going to be real. I have watched every single one of Texas's games this season, including the alumni game, and there doesn't seem to be anything blatantly obvious that is a weakness about this team. I will say Mitch Daly at that cleanup hitter role is definitely really interesting on David Pierce's part. I think it was the right call with Antico and Zubia and Cam Williams leaving and Melendez taking that number 3 role. So with Mitch Daly coming in as cleanup hitter, he's very unorthodox in the way where he's not always going to be getting those moonshots. He's not the most powerful hitter on the team, but he can get those singles. And he really proved that with last year's statistics, but honestly this year I think he's only batting at a 200, and we have to nuance that with just our past few games just playing in really, really, really bad conditions with the weather and it being rainy and it being cold. So I'm really expecting him to really step it up in these next few games, especially these games in Houston against these big SEC opponents. And honestly, it's anywhere on this lineup, it seems set in stone right now, but if David Pierce wants somebody like a big hitter like Silas Ardoin coming in at that cleanup hitter role, it could happen.
Right. And I think Pierce definitely knows what he's doing for sure. So I think he sees something. I think he knows Daly has the potential. So I think we really just have to give it time, especially this weekend, to see if he can perform where he needs to.
Well, especially because you're only 9 games in the year. There's enough time for it to kind of average out.
Yeah.
You can go through slumps and stuff as a baseball player, especially with such a long season. So, like you said, Pierce, I don't think he'll be afraid to make a change, but he's probably giving it time to kind of see how it's working out. And, I mean, 9-0, scoring 62 more runs than your opponent.
Right.
Can't complain too much at the moment. Like you You just kind of mentioned it. Team heading to Houston this week, Shriners Hospital for Children Classic. Huge games against Power 5 opponents. Which of the 3 matchups are you most looking forward to?
It's got to be LSU. I mean, and maybe it's just because I'm from Houston, so I grew up around a lot of LSU baseball fans. But LSU has another great baseball blue blood program. I think they have 6 national titles underneath their belts. They have that new coach, and I believe his name is Jay Johnson. And honestly, they have come into the season. I think they're ranked number 7 by D1 Baseball. And everybody talks about their really crazy offense, but honestly, their starting weekend rotation for their pitchers has been really impressive this season, especially with Blake Money. We should be up against Mikhail Hilliard, and I've heard that he has a great changeup. I was actually just talking with the LSU baseball beat reporter last night, so we can expect some great play from LSU and Tennessee as well, but I'm just real excited to see like that really big SEC matchup where LSU and baseball just are such historical baseball programs.
Remember, it was the beginning of last year where Texas had a heck of a struggle against some SEC opponents up in Arlington, so hopefully that doesn't repeat itself this year.
What do you think the key will be for Texas to get back to that national championship and win it?
I mean, honestly, it's got to be the defense. I mean, you have to play to your strengths in every single, like in any sport, whether it be volleyball or baseball or softball or football. And everybody talks about this big Texas defense, and that's what we have. I mean, you're not really seeing very many errors out there. You have great guys up the middle like Mitch Daly, who used to be a shortstop, and Trey Faltini. Our outfield is seriously so phenomenal. I mean, you're seeing guys like Dougie Hodo making these great relay plays, and honestly, you just don't see them making very many mistakes. Even Silas Ardwan, he really doesn't even allow people to steal bases on him. So you're not going to see very many people able to score on our Texas defense.
Yeah, for sure, and they definitely showed that this year. Only 10 runs allowed so far this year, and they pretty much shut Alabama down in those 3 games against Power 5 opposition. So you've given us the keys. Now let's make the call. Do you think this team will win the national championship? Will they avenge last year's heartbreaking defeat?
I think that they have all of the tools to do so. I mean, you have a lot of veteran experience. It's so huge for Tristan Stevens to come back because not only is he a great pitcher who has great command of the zone, but he provides so much mentorship to all of the younger pitchers, and he honestly just radiates confidence. I mean, you can really see it just even how he handles himself both on the mound and even talking in post-game interviews. I mean, he has so much confidence in himself and this team. I mean, there really isn't any major weaknesses on this team for other teams to really exploit. So if all goes right, there shouldn't be a reason why Texas doesn't make a deep run in Omaha.
So we're booking our plane tickets to Omaha then?
I sure am.
There you go. It's going to be fun to watch this Texas baseball team throughout this year. It's going to be fun this weekend. I think we learned a lot about this team this weekend. Well, don't worry. Jordan won't be going anywhere. We're going to make her the baseball writer pick some basketball. We'll see how that goes. But we'll have our picks NBA, NCAA, and of course we got to predict how Texas baseball is going to do this weekend. All that coming up on the next segment. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the 1-0 Sports Show.
Nice.
For the final time on this wonderful Friday morning, welcome back in to the 1-0 Sports Show. And it's time to finish up this 1-0 Sports Show like we do every single week with our predictions for the upcoming week of sports. So let's start in the NBA. Bucks taking on the Bulls tonight at 6:30. Bowen, who do you have in that one?
I have the Bulls using their home court advantage.
I say not so fast, my friend. The Bucks came down. They were down by 14 against the Heat midweek with 6 minutes to go. Came back from that. I like me some Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton. Should be a good one. Give me the Bucks in a close one. Jordan?
I think I have the Bucks too. I mean, I wouldn't really want to be playing against one of the most dominating players in the league with Giannis right now.
For sure. That should be a good one. 2 great teams in that loaded Eastern Conference like we were talking about. Let's Go to another matchup. Two more teams at the top of the East. 76ers traveling down to Miami tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Jordan, who do you have in that one?
I think I have the 76ers. I mean, with Harden on that team now, you have a really great duo, and I think that they could get like a real statement win here.
I think that's a great pick, Bone. We talked about this earlier, that we think the 76ers are legit contenders in the East. I think they can do it again. I think Harden leads in a tight victory. The 76ers team, they're going to be a team to watch out in the East.
And I agree with both of y'all. I think Harden, starting with that triple-double, they're very close to a triple-double. I think 76ers are going to be one to watch.
For sure. Let's stay in the East. A lot of Eastern Conference basketball going on right now. Let's go Raptors traveling up to Cleveland. This is Sunday, 6:30 on ESPN. Bowen, who do you have in this one?
This is a tough pick for me, but I'm going to pick the Cavaliers to beat the Raptors.
I'm going to say great pick there. Darius Garland back from injury. I saw last night the Raptors are without OJ Anunoby right now. I think Garland leads the Cavs to a home victory. Jordan?
I actually have the Raptors. I think that the Cavs are a really young team that kind of are having some identity issues. They're really young and they are struggling in the second half of the season, and I think that the Raptors take it.
They are coming off a big loss to the Hornets. The Cavaliers are, so we see if they'll bounce back or Jordan will be right on that one. Let's go into some college hoops now. Big game, the SEC Saturday at 11 a.m. Number 14, Arkansas, traveling to take on number 13, Tennessee. Jordan, who do you have in that one?
I have Rick Barnes in Tennessee. I mean, his team is firing on all cylinders, and they are really gritty, and they can find ways to win.
Great pick. I think Rick Barnes at home. Arkansas narrowly avoided a loss to LSU midweek at home. I think a trip to Tennessee will be too much. Plus, when these two teams met a couple weeks ago, Arkansas won by 10 in Fayetteville. Tennessee's out for revenge on Saturday.
I'm going to disagree with both of y'all. I think Arkansas goes into Tennessee and gets the win. Arkansas's been on fire lately, and I think they continue that on the road.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be facing Eric Musselman, man. That dude is a bundle of energy for Arkansas. That'll be a good one. And let's stay in the SEC. Number 25, Alabama, traveling to take on LSU. That one also Saturday at 11 a.m. Bowen, who do you have in that one?
I have Alabama.
I'm going to say not so quick. I've got LSU. They gave Arkansas all they wanted. They gave Arkansas all they wanted in Fayetteville midweek. When these two teams played in Tuscaloosa, Bama won just by 3. I think LSU flips it on them when they come back to Baton Rouge. Give me the Tigers.
I might just be an Alabama hater, but I have LSU. I mean, Bama is coming off a tough loss at home, and I think the Tigers take it.
Yeah, our good friends in College Station handing Alabama a loss midweek. Let's go over to the ACC. Coach K, final game against North Carolina. I saw the most expensive ticket, I think, for this one was $99,000. There's some ridiculous money being thrown around for this one. So, Bowen, does Duke end it right and take down North Carolina for Coach K?
No brainer. Duke all the way.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the easiest pick we make. There is no way Duke is losing Coach K's final game, regular season game against North Carolina. Give me the Blue Devils convincingly.
Coach K's not going to lose to North Carolina. There's no shot, not in his final game.
He's coached way too long to go out with a loss to North Carolina. We all love the Blue Devils. How about a little bit Los Angeles rivalry? This is an interesting one. Number 16 USC taking on number 17 UCLA Saturday, 9 o'clock. Jordan, who do you have in that one?
I think UCLA. I mean, they've been an underwhelming team this season, and honestly, they really need the statement win.
I agree. See, the baseball writer, she knows what she's talking about. UCLA, they've lost 5 in a row against USC at home this weekend. I think they're going to make that streak end. We saw this team, they got a lot of pieces back from that Final Four run last year. I think they can put those pieces together and come up with a big win. Like you said, that statement win they need at home this weekend. Bowen, what about you?
Not so fast. I have USC going in and continuing that good streak against UCLA. I think they're too much to handle.
Now let's go to some baseball. Let's get in Jordan's wheelhouse. Let's start with Bowen, and we'll come back to Jordan. She'll bring us home. How many games do you think Texas is going to win in Houston this weekend?
I think 3. I think, like we were talking about earlier, LSU is going to be our biggest opponent that we faced all year. Alabama was good, but they're not LSU good. They're 7-1. They are 7 in the nation. They're going to be a tough challenge for Texas, but I think we take them.
Man, this makes me nervous. I'm going to go 2. I think it's 3 good Power 5 opponents. It's those first 2, the LSU-Tennessee duo that makes me nervous. It's hard to win every game in baseball. I think Texas slips up somewhere one of those first 2 games. I'm going to go 2 out of 3. But, I mean, they're going to be close in the loss, but I just feel like they're going to get edged eventually, especially against tight competition. Yeah. Jordan, what do you think?
the baseball writer in me wants to say 2, but I think that Texas pulls out 3 wins. I mean, like I said earlier, this team plays best when the lights are shining the brightest, and they are going to be playing at home in Minute Maid against future SEC opponents. Tennessee is definitely going to be out for blood because Texas booted them out of the College World Series tournament last year. So it's going to be a real toughie, and everybody knows about LSU. UCLA is an admirable opponent too. But I think that this Texas team can really pull out 3 wins out of these games.
I don't think Texas has a ton of friends in the SEC right now.
No.
All right, let's stay in Texas. Let's bring it back home. Women's basketball, the women hosting Oklahoma State in what the final ever regular season game at the Frank Irwin Center. Bowen, who do you have in that one?
I have the Lady Longhorns. I think they're going to pull it out.
I agree. Vic Schaefer, he's been trying to get people out. I think if 10,000 fans show up on Saturday, he's going to make a $10,000 donation to a local charity. So show up, support the Lady Longhorns, because I think you're going to see a victory on Saturday. I think they're going to beat Oklahoma State rather convincingly. Give me a double-digit victory for the Lady Longhorns.
Yeah, especially with Audrey Warren and Deanna Gaston coming back from those injuries that we saw in a game or 2 ago. Yeah, there's no way that Coach is going to be losing his final game in Frank Irwin, especially with a big crowd.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's been urging people to come out all week. Hopefully they support. I mean, kids, these Lady Longhorns, number 9 in the nation. They are performing. They got some star freshmen, Rory Harmon. They got Joan Allen Taylor leading the way. Elite 8 team last year. I mean, they can make another run. Let's bring it home. Final pick of the day. Men's basketball, man, they've got a tough task awaiting them Saturday at 3 o'clock. They've got to travel up to Allen Fieldhouse and Lawrence to take on number 6 Kansas. Jordan, who do you have in that one?
This might be a hot take, but I think Texas. I mean, Texas has been giving Kansas a run for their money. They're honestly one of the few teams that have been able to be competitive against Kansas with winning some games against them these past few seasons, and it's going to be a real toughie. And honestly, any team that goes into Kansas is honestly like a 5-point underdog going in. But I think Texas is looking for another statement win going into the tournament, and I think that it is feasible for them to get it against this Kansas team.
Man, I think Texas, if I'm not mistaken, they slaughtered Kansas up in Lawrence last year. I just think it's going to be hard to do it again. We've seen this Texas team has really struggled on the road. We saw really Baylor beat them pretty convincingly up in Waco. Texas Tech really always had them at kind of arm's length in Lubbock. And so I think it's too tall of a task. This is a Kansas team that's really coming into its own. It's going to be frustrated after a bad loss to TCU midweek and Baylor last week. And I think this Kansas team, they got a win over TCU last night. I think they bounced back with another big win over a ranked opponent, Texas. I think the Longhorns can keep it close, but I just think it's too tall of a task right now where this team is at, especially without the height of Trey Mitchell, to go into Lawrence and get a victory.
Yeah.
Bowen, what do you think?
I'm going to agree with you. I think the home crowd advantage against Kansas is going to be too much for us. I think we'll keep it close. I think our the defense will keep it very competitive, but overall I think Kansas is too much to handle for Texas.
Definitely going to be a fun one to watch. It's going to be a loaded weekend of Texas sports, baseball, basketball, both men's and women's. It's going to be fun to watch as a Longhorn fan. But for us, that is it for this morning. Big thanks to Jordan for coming on. Bowen killed it on his on-air 1-0 debut. Big shout out to John Kelly over in Master Control, making things run behind the scenes. Make sure you tune in next week at 10 a.m. We'll be back for one last show before spring break, and be sure to check out our sister shows, College Press Box Monday nights at 9:30, and College Crossfire, the best sports debate on the 40 acres, hosted by our very own Drew Jacob, Wednesday nights at 9. But thank you so much for tuning in. For all of us here in studio and John and Master Control, have a great weekend.